The shuttle shook as it entered the atmosphere of Prime. Park sat alone in the passenger cabin, her hands folded calmly in her lap. Through the small window, she could see the war world below. Red clouds covered most of the planet. Mountains rose like broken teeth from the surface. Everything about this place screamed danger. The pilot's voice came through the speaker. "Captain Park, we are beginning our descent. I must ask one more time. Are you certain about this?" Smiled softly, "I am certain. They have killed more species than any empire in recorded history. They eat their enemies. They display skulls as decorations. And Earth Command is sending you alone, without weapons, without armor." "I know," said. "That is exactly why I volunteered." The pilot went quiet. He did not understand. Nobody understood. The entire galaxy thought humanity had gone mad when they announced their diplomatic mission to the Empire. Every other species had tried war, threats, and sanctions. Nothing worked. They respected only strength, and they were stronger than everyone else. But had read the intelligence reports more carefully than most. She had noticed something interesting. They were fierce, yes. They were brutal and terrifying, but they also had families. They raised children. They mourned their dead. Beneath all that armor and all those fangs, they were still living creatures with hearts that could feel. And Park knew a lot about hearts. She had grown up on a frontier colony called New. Life there was hard. Her parents worked in the mines and were often gone for weeks, raised her 3 younger siblings almost by herself. She learned patience. She learned how to calm a crying baby at 3 in the morning. She learned how to make peace between fighting children. After her siblings grew up, she became a veterinarian. She spent 10 years treating animals on the colony. Farmers brought her sick cattle. Miners brought her injured dogs. Once, a hunter brought her a wounded predator from the mountains, a creature with 6 legs and poison fangs. Everyone said she was crazy to treat it. She did it anyway. The creature recovered and never attacked another human in that region again. Then she became a kindergarten teacher. Another 10 years. Hundreds of children passed through her classroom. Some were easy. Many were difficult. A few were downright dangerous. She handled them all with the same calm patience she used on animals. When the diplomatic corps asked for volunteers to go to Prime, raised her hand immediately. Her superiors thought she was joking. Her colleagues thought she had a death wish, but simply smiled and said, "I have experience with difficult children." The shuttle landed with a heavy thump, stood up and straightened her uniform. It was simple and with no medals or decorations. She carried no weapons. Her only belongings were a small bag of personal items and a data pad loaded with children's books. The doors opened, and heat rushed into the cabin. Prime was a hot world. Stepped out onto the landing platform and got her first real look at the. They were exactly as terrifying as the reports said. 8 feet tall, covered in dark scales that shimmered like metal. Their faces were flat and reptilian, with golden eyes that had no visible emotion. Rows of teeth filled their mouths, each one sharp enough to cut through bone. Their hands ended in claws that could tear through steel. A dozen warriors stood in formation on the platform. They wore armor covered in symbols and markings. Knew from her research that each symbol represented an enemy killed in battle. Some of these warriors had hundreds of symbols. At the front stood a female in elaborate robes. She was smaller than the warriors but carried herself with obvious authority. This was Counselor, assigned to manage the human visitor. A look down at with clear disgust. "You are the diplomat." "I am Captain Park of the United Earth Diplomatic Corps," bowed politely. "Thank you for receiving me." "You are small." "Yes." "You are soft." "Yes." "You carry no weapons. You wear no armor. You have no guards." Leaned closer, her breath hot and smelling of meat. "Are all humans this foolish or just you?" Looked up at the towering alien without any fear in her eyes. "Where I come from, we have a saying. The loudest voice in the room is rarely the strongest." Stared at her for a long moment. Then she made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You will die here, little human, but at least you will be entertaining first. Come, the Supreme Warlord expects you." They traveled through the capital city in an armored transport, watched through the windows with genuine curiosity. The city was built for war. Every building looked like a fortress. Statues of famous warriors stood on every corner. The streets were filled with going about their daily lives, but even the civilians moved like soldiers. Yet noticed other things too. She saw a female carrying a small child on her back. She saw two young playing some kind of game in an alley. She saw an old sitting alone on a bench, staring at the sky with what looked like sadness. They were not so different after all. The transport stopped at the largest building had ever seen, the Warlord's palace. It was built from black stone and covered in carvings of battles and conquests. Skulls decorated the entrance, real skulls from dozens of different species. Followed through countless hallways, guards watched them pass with suspicious eyes. Finally, they reached a massive door covered in gold and precious stones. "The Supreme Warlord, or will see you now," announced. "Do not speak unless spoken to. Do not make sudden movements. Do not show fear." She paused. "Actually, showing fear might keep you alive longer. He enjoys fear." The doors opened. The throne room was enormous. Pillars carved with scenes of violence held up a ceiling so high it disappeared into darkness. At the far end sat the Supreme Warlord himself, or was the largest had ever seen, nearly 9 feet tall even while sitting. His scales were dark red, almost black. Scars covered every visible part of his body. His eyes glowed like molten gold. He wore armor made from the bones of his enemies. Around him stood advisors, generals, and guards. They all looked at like she was a bug that had wandered into their den. Walked forward. Her footsteps echoed in the silence. She stopped at the proper distance and bowed deeply. "Supreme Warlord, or I am Captain Park. I carry greetings from Earth and from all humanity. We seek peace between our peoples." Or said nothing for a long moment. His eyes studied her like a predator studying prey. "Peace," he finally said. His voice was deep and rough, like rocks grinding together. "Your people speak of peace while other species prepare for war. You send a single female with no weapons into my palace. Either humanity is very stupid or very clever. I have not decided which." "Perhaps we are a little of both," said. The Warlord made that same sound I had made, a harsh laugh. "You have courage, small one. That is unexpected." He leaned forward. "But courage alone will not save your species. I have destroyed civilizations built by creatures far braver than you." "I do not doubt it, great Warlord, but I did not come here to be saved. I came here to understand, and perhaps in understanding to find a path forward for both our peoples." Or studied her again. Then he waved one massive claw. "Very well, you may stay. I am told you are to serve as cultural liaison to my household." Something flickered in his golden eyes, something that might have been pain. "You will begin with my son, my heir, I." He spoke the name like it hurt him. "The child's mother died 3 months ago. Since then he has been difficult. 3 caretakers have been sent to the medical ward. He attacks everyone who comes near him." The Warlord's claws dug into his throne. "If you can tame him, human, then perhaps I will believe your species has something to offer besides words." Bowed again. "I would be honored to meet your son." As guards led her away toward the nursery wing, allowed herself a small smile. She had faced worse than a grieving, angry child. At least she hoped she had. The nursery wing was not what expected. She had imagined something cold and military, like everything else in the palace. Instead, she found a series of rooms filled with soft materials and gentle lighting. Toys were scattered across the floor. Paintings of stars and moons decorated the walls. Someone had tried very hard to make this place comfortable for a child. But the guards standing outside the main nursery door told a different story. They wore full battle armor. Their weapons were drawn. They looked at the door like it contained a dangerous beast. In a way, it did. "The heir is inside," said the head guard, a female named "We have not entered in 2 days. He attacks anyone who opens the door. We slide food through the slot, but he barely eats." Nodded. "Has anyone tried talking to him?" Looked confused. "Talking?" "Yes, sitting with him, speaking softly, letting him know he is not alone." The guards exchanged glances. One of them made a sound that might have been a laugh. He does not need soft words. He needs discipline. He needs to learn strength." "He is 6 months old," said quietly. "He needs his mother. Since he cannot have her, he needs someone who will be patient with his pain." The guards did not know how to respond to this. Culture valued strength above all else. Showing weakness, especially emotional weakness, was shameful. A child crying for its mother would be seen as pathetic, not tragic. But came from a different world. "Open the door," she said. Hesitated. "Human, I must warn you. The previous caretakers were warriors, trained fighters. He put them in the medical ward. You are small and soft. He will kill you." Smiled gently. "I have survived worse than a sad baby with sharp teeth. Open the door." The guards looked at each other again. Then shrugged and entered the unlock code. "Your death will be on your own head, human." The door slid open. The nursery was dark. Someone had broken the main lights. Furniture was overturned and torn apart. Claw marks covered every surface. In the corner, hidden behind a destroyed crib, something hissed. Stepped inside. The door closed behind her. She stood very still and let her eyes adjust to the darkness. Slowly, she could make out a small shape huddled in the corner. Golden eyes glowed in the shadows. The hissing grew louder. "Hello there," said softly. She did not move toward the child. She simply sat down on the floor, cross-legged, several meters away. "My name is, I am going to sit here for a while. You do not have to come out. You do not have to do anything. I just want you to know that you are not alone." The hissing continued. The golden eyes watched her without blinking. Waited. She had learned long ago that patience was the most important tool when dealing with frightened creatures. Whether it was a scared animal or a troubled child, the approach was the same. Do not force. Do not threaten. Simply be present. Let them come to you. She began to hum softly. It was a lullaby her grandmother had taught her, back on Earth before her family moved to the colonies. The melody was simple and slow, rising and falling like gentle waves. The hissing stopped. Kept humming. She did not look directly at the child. She looked at the floor, at the walls, at the broken toys scattered around. She let her body language say what words could not. "I am not a threat. I am not here to hurt you. I am just here." Minutes passed, then an hour. Legs grew numb from sitting, but she did not move. She switched from humming to singing softly, old Korean folk songs about mountains and rivers and children playing in the snow. Finally, she heard movement. Small footsteps, careful and slow. The child was approaching. Kept her eyes down. She kept her breathing steady. She kept singing. A small face appeared at the edge of her vision. I was exactly as she had imagined from the descriptions. A tiny version of his father with dark red scales and golden eyes. But where or was massive and terrifying, I was simply small. His scales were still soft. His claws were still short. His teeth were still growing in. He looked like what he was, a baby. A scared, lonely, grieving baby who had lost his mother and did not understand why. I circled around her slowly. He sniffed the air. He made small chirping sounds that guessed were his way of gathering information. She let him investigate without reacting. Then he attacked. It happened fast. One moment he was circling, the next he had lunged at her arm. His tiny fangs sank into her forearm, breaking the skin. Blood welled up around his teeth. Outside the door, heard the guards shouting. They were preparing to burst in and save her. "Do not open the door," called out. Her voice was calm, even with an infant attached to her arm. I am fine, stay outside. The guards hesitated. They could see through a small window. They watched in shock as the human woman looked down at the child biting her arm and smiled. "Oh my," said softly, "tiny teeth." She reached out with her free hand and gently touched the top of Ai's head. He flinched but did not let go. She ran her fingers lightly over his scales, feeling their softness. Then she moved her hand down to his snout and gave it a gentle tap. A boop. That was what her younger siblings had called it when she did it to them as bobbies. A gentle, playful touch on the nose. Ai released her arm. He sat back on his haunches and stared at her with wide eyes. His whole body radiated confusion. He had attacked her. He had hurt her. She was supposed to scream. She was supposed to run. She was supposed to fight back. Instead, she had called his teeth tiny and booped his nose. "It is okay," said softly. She did not try to touch him again. She simply stayed where she was, bleeding slightly from her arm, smiling at him with warm eyes. "You are angry. You are scared. You miss your mother, I understand. You can bite me as many times as you need. I will still be here." I chirped. It was a different sound than before. Heir, questioning, reached into her bag and pulled out a small container. Inside were cookies she had brought from the shuttle. Simple earth cookies, made with sugar and flour. She opened the container and set one on the floor between them. "Are you hungry? You should eat something. Growing bobbies need food." The infant stared at the cookie. He sniffed the air. Slowly, carefully, he crept forward. His eyes never left his face, watching for any sign of danger. He grabbed the cookie and retreated quickly to a safe distance. Then he took a bite. His eyes went wide. He had never tasted anything like it. Food was mostly meat, raw and bloody. This was sweet. This was soft. This was wonderful. He finished the cookie in 3 bites and chirped loudly. More. He wanted more. Laughed. It was a genuine laugh, full of warmth. "You like them. I am glad. Here, have another." She placed another cookie on the floor. This time, I did not retreat after taking it. He sat down right there, only a meter away from her, and ate. When he finished, he looked at her again. The fear was still there, but something else was growing beside it. Curiosity, interest, maybe even the beginning of trust. Held out her hand, palm up, an invitation, not a demand. I stared at her hand for a long moment. Then, slowly, he crept forward and pressed his snout against her palm. Outside, the guards watched in stunned silence. Ai's jaw hung open. In 30 years of service, she had never seen anything like this. The Warlord's heir, the terror of the nursery wing, was nuzzling a human's hand like a tame pet. "What kind of creature is she?" one guard whispered. I shook her head. "I do not know, but I think we should tell the Warlord." Inside the nursery, sat quietly as I explored her hand, her arm, her face. He sniffed her hair and made excited chirping sounds. He touched her soft skin with his claws and seemed fascinated by how different it was from his own scales. Eventually, he grew tired. It had been a long day. He had been alone for so long. And now, for the first time since his mother died, he felt something other than rage and fear. He felt safe. Without thinking about it, he crawled into his lap. He curled up against her stomach, his small body warm against hers. Within minutes, he was asleep. Did not move. Her legs were completely numb now. Her arm was still bleeding. She would need medical attention soon. But none of that mattered. She looked down at the sleeping infant in her lap, at his soft scales and tiny claws and small chest rising and falling with each breath. She remembered all the children she had comforted over the years, all the animals she had healed, all the scared creatures who had learned to trust her. "Sleep well, little one," she whispered. "I am not going anywhere." When the guards finally entered hours later to check on her, they found the human woman still sitting in the same position. Her legs were asleep. Her arm had stopped bleeding but needed treatment. And in her lap, for the first time in 3 months, the Warlord's heir slept peacefully. The news spread through the palace like fire. The human had done the impossible. 3 weeks had passed since first entered the nursery. In that time, everything had changed. I no longer slept alone. He refused to sleep unless was nearby. The first night she tried to leave him in the nursery and return to her assigned quarters, he screamed so loudly that guards came running from 3 floors away. After that, a small bed was moved into the nursery for her. The heir no longer attacked his caretakers. This was because he no longer allowed anyone else to care for him, only could feed him, only could bathe him, only could hold him when he was scared. The staff found this both impressive and slightly insulting. Most shocking of all, the heir had started eating vegetables. This was unheard of. Were carnivores. Their bodies could process plant matter, but they considered it beneath them. A warrior ate meat. Only prey ate plants. Yet here was the heir of the supreme warlord, happily munching on something called a carrot while the human female clapped her hands and told him he was a good boy. The palace staff did not know what to make of this. Lieutenant arrived at the palace 1 month after his mission began. He was her security, sent by Earth Command to check on her status. They had expected to find her dead or at least seriously injured. Instead, they received reports that she was thriving. Was a tall man with a serious face. He had served in the Earth military for 15 years and had seen combat on 4 different worlds. Nothing had prepared him for what he found on Prime. The intelligence officers met him at the landing platform. They were extremely interested in humans now, extremely interested and very confused. "Tell us about your species," demanded Chief Interrogator Al. He was a massive with one eye missing and scars covering half his face. "We have been studying the human female. We do not understand what we are seeing." Smiled politely. "What exactly do not you understand?" "Everything." Al pulled up a holographic display showing in the nursery. She was sitting on the floor while I showed her a collection of rocks he had gathered. Each time he presented a rock, she examined it carefully and told him how beautiful it was. The infant's tail wagged like a happy dog. "She does not fear him," Al said. "He bit her 7 times in the first week. Drew blood 5 times, she never flinched, she never struck back, she never showed anger, she simply smiled and touched his nose." Nodded. "That sounds like Captain Park." "How is this possible? She is small, she is weak. She has no natural weapons. Any rational creature would flee from an infant. They are born with teeth and claws. They are dangerous from birth." "Humans are not always rational," said, "especially when it comes to things we find cute." They stared at him blankly. "Cute." "Yes, cute. It is difficult to translate, but it means something small and harmless looking that triggers a protective response. Big eyes, small body, soft features. When humans see something cute, our brains release chemicals that make us want to protect it and care for it." Al's remaining eye narrowed. "You are saying the human female sees the Supreme Warlord's heir, a apex predator, as cute?" "Almost certainly." The intelligence officers exchanged troubled glances. One of them pulled up more files on the display. "We have done research on your species," he said. "We found disturbing information." "Such as?" "You keep apex predators as companions. Large carnivores with fangs and claws, you call them pets. You let them sleep in your homes. You call them good boys." Smiled. "Dogs and cats, yes. Also birds, snakes, spiders, and many other creatures. Humans have been domesticating animals for thousands of years. But these creatures could kill you." "Some of them, yes, especially dogs. A large dog could easily kill a human child, but we trust them, we bond with them, and they become loyal to us in return." They were clearly struggling to process this information. Al leaned forward. "We also found records of humans deliberately seeking out the most dangerous creatures on your planet. You call it tourism. You pay money to go near sharks, bears, lions, and other predators. You take pictures with them." "That is correct. Some humans have died doing this." Also correct. And you continue doing it anyway. Yes. Al sat back in his chair. His face showed something had never seen on it before. Uncertainty, maybe even fear. What kind of produces creatures like you? Thought about this for a moment. Earth is not the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. We do not have the strongest gravity or the deadliest predators, but we do have one thing that seems unique. What is that? We evolved alongside creatures that could kill us. Predators, diseases, natural disasters. For millions of years, survival was uncertain. So we developed strange ways of coping. We learned to find joy in danger. We learned to bond with things that might hurt us. We learned to see potential friends where others see only threats. He pointed at the display, where was now reading a picture book to Eye. The infant was curled in her lap, eyes closed in contentment. Captain Park is not unusual for a human. She is actually quite typical. Put any human in a room with a dangerous baby, and most of them will try to make friends with it. It is simply how we are built. The Strategic Council held an emergency meeting that night. The intelligence officers presented their findings. The council members, the most powerful warlords in the Empire, listened in growing discomfort. So the humans are not weak, said War Chief. They are simply insane. Not insane, Al corrected. Differently evolved. Their survival strategy is based on forming bonds with anything and everything around them. Predators, prey, even enemies. They see social connections as their primary tool for survival. That is absurd. Strength is survival. Power is survival. Alliances are temporary, but the strong always endure. And yet, said an elderly council member, the human female has done something no warrior could do. She has calmed the warlord's Heir. She has brought peace to his heart. Is that not also a form of strength? The council fell silent. Meanwhile, in the nursery, was having her own revelation. I had learned his first word. It was not a word. It was not a formal word at all. He had been playing with a toy when it fell under the bed. He reached for it, could not get it, and looked at with frustration. "No," he said, "no help." His heart stopped. She had been speaking to him constantly, using simple words and phrases, but she had not expected him to speak back so soon. Children typically did not speak until they were much older. "What did you say?" she whispered. "No," he pointed at the toy. "No help, please." Tears filled her eyes. She crawled under the bed and retrieved the toy. When she handed it to him, he chirped happily and hugged it to his chest. "Thank no," he said. She gathered him into her arms and held him tight. He did not resist. He simply nestled against her, warm and content. "You are welcome, little one," she said. "You are very welcome." Word of this spread through the palace even faster than before. The heir had spoken. His first word was the human's name. This was without precedent. Children's first words were usually mother or father or food. Simple, practical things. But Ai's first word was the name of the strange, soft creature who had shown him kindness when he was alone in the dark. Supreme Warlord, or summoned to his throne room that evening. She came with Ai in her arms. The infant refused to let her go anywhere without him now. Or stared at them for a long moment. His face was unreadable. "He spoke," the warlord said. "Yes, great warlord." "His first word was your name." "Yes." Or rose from his throne. He was enormous, terrifying, a creature who had killed thousands with his own claws. He walked toward each step, shaking the floor. He stopped directly in front of her, looking down. His golden eyes burned. "You have given my son something I could not," he said quietly. "Peace, safety, someone to call for when he is afraid." His voice cracked slightly. "His mother gave him those things. When she died, I thought they died with her." Met his gaze without fear. "He is a good child, great warlord. He just needed someone to see past his pain." Or reached out one massive claw. Gently, more gently than would have thought possible, he touched his son's head. I chirped and leaned into his father's touch. "What manner of creature are you, human?" or asked. Smiled. "Just someone who knows that even the fiercest warriors start out as scared children." The warlord said nothing, but when left the throne room, she noticed something different in how the guards looked at her. They no longer looked at her like prey. They looked at her with respect. Not everyone in the empire welcomed the changes happening in the palace. Some watched with growing anger as their supreme warlord's heir learned human words, ate human food, and clung to a human female like she was his mother. War Chief was one of these watchers. He was old and a veteran of 100 battles. He had served the empire for over 60 years. He remembered the old ways, when children were raised in blood and fire, when weakness was punished and strength was everything. Now he watched the heir of his great empire cuddling with an alien creature, and his heart filled with disgust. "This is corruption," he said to his followers, a group of traditionalist warriors who shared his views. "The human is poisoning the heir's mind. She is making him soft, weak. He will never be a true warlord if this continues." "What do you suggest we do?" asked one of his lieutenants. His eyes glittered with cold purpose. "The human must be removed, and when she is gone, the heir must learn that attachment leads only to pain. It is the way." The plan was simple. During a diplomatic dinner, they would poison the heir's food. The poison would be traced back to human ingredients. The evidence would show that Earth had attempted to assassinate the warlord's son. War would follow. The human female would be executed, and the empire would return to its proper path. The dinner was held 3 days later. Representatives from 6 allied species attended, along with the human delegation. Lieutenant sat at the table, representing Earth's interests. Was there too, with I beside her in a special elevated seat so he could reach the table. The infant had been practicing his table manners all week, had taught him to use utensils instead of his claws. He was very proud of himself. "Watch na," he said, carefully lifting a piece of meat with a small fork. "I do good." "Very good," said, smiling warmly. "You are learning so fast." Across the room, watched and waited. The poisoned dish would be served soon. Everything was in place. The food arrived. Servants placed plates before each guest. I's special plate included a small portion of vegetables, something he had grown to love since meeting. The poison had been added to these vegetables. No one would suspect until it was too late. I picked up his fork and reached for the vegetables. Noticed something. She was not sure what at first. Maybe it was the way the servants had handled that particular plate. Maybe it was something in the color of the food. Or maybe, after so many years of caring for creatures who could not speak for themselves, she had developed an instinct for danger. Her hand shot out and grabbed I's wrist before the fork reached his mouth. "Wait," she said. I looked at her with confusion. "Nuh, I hungry." "I know, little one, but let me check something first." She lifted the plate and examined it closely. She sniffed the vegetables. There was a strange smell, very faint, hidden under the seasonings. Her veterinary training had included toxicology. She had learned to identify dozens of poisons that affected Earth animals. This smell was not from Earth, but it did not belong in food either. "Lieutenant," she said calmly, "please come here." Approached. He saw the concern in her eyes and immediately went on alert. "Something is wrong with this food," said quietly. "We need to test it." Pulled out a small device from his pocket. All diplomatic personnel carried portable analyzers for exactly this kind of situation. He scanned the vegetables. The device beeped. Red warning lights flashed. "Toxin detected," announced loudly. "This food has been poisoned." The room erupted in chaos. Guards rushed forward. Guests stood up in alarm. Servants fled. In the confusion, tried to slip away, but the palace security system had already identified him as the one who had arranged the seating and the food. He was seized before he reached the door. Supreme Warlord arose from his throne. His face was terrible in its fury. Someone had tried to kill his son, his only child, the last piece of his beloved mate that remained in this world. "Bring him to me," the Warlord commanded. Was dragged before the throne. He did not beg, he did not deny. He stood tall and defiant. "I did what was necessary," he said. "The Heir was being corrupted. The human was destroying everything our empire stands for. Weakness cannot be tolerated. Attachment makes us vulnerable. I tried to save our people from this poison of the soul." Or stared at him for a long moment. "You tried to murder my son. For the good of the empire." The Warlord's claws extended. Everyone in the room knew what was about to happen. But then a small voice spoke. "Father, wait." Everyone turned. I had climbed down from his seat. He was walking toward the throne, his small legs carrying him with surprising steadiness. Tried to stop him, but he shook his head. "I must do this," he said. "Na teach." He stopped before his father and looked up. Then he turned to face. "You try hurt I," the child said. His voice was clear and strong. "You bad, you wrong." Sneered, "You see, the Heir speaks human words. He has forgotten how to be." "No," I said. I is also kind. Na teach that strong is not only claws, strong is also heart. Strong is love people. Strong is protect, not just hurt." The room was silent. A child of 6 months was lecturing one of the most feared warriors in the empire about strength. And somehow, impossibly, his words carried weight. Or looked at his son. Really looked at him, perhaps for the first time since his mate had died. He saw a child who was not weak. He saw a child who was different. A child who might become something new, something better. "Execute the traitor," the Warlord said to his guards. But let history record that he was condemned not only for attempted murder, but for failing to understand true strength. Was dragged away, screaming curses. The dinner was abandoned. Medical Officer Han, part of the human delegation, arrived to examine I and ensure no poison had entered his system. Sat alone in the corner of the room, shaking. The adrenaline was fatting. The reality was setting in. Someone had tried to kill I, her little one, the child she had grown to love like her own, if she had not noticed the poison, if she had been even a moment slower. Tears streamed down her face. A small hand touched her cheek. I stood before her. His golden eyes were filled with concern. "Na cry?" he asked. "Na hurt?" "No, little one." She pulled him into her arms and held him tight. "I am just happy you are safe, so happy." He nestled against her. "Na save I, na brave, na strong." She laughed through her tears. "You were the brave one, standing up to that warrior, telling everyone what true strength means." "Na teach," he said simply. "I learn." Or approached them. His massive form cast a shadow over them both, but when he spoke, his voice was gentle. "Human, you saved my son's life tonight." Looked up at him. "I would do it again without hesitation. He is precious to me." The Warlord nodded slowly. "I see that now. I see many things I did not see before." He knelt down, bringing himself closer to their level. "You called my son's teeth tiny. You booped his nose when he attacked you. You showed him kindness when he knew only rage. And tonight, you proved that your people's ways are not weakness. They are a different kind of strength." He reached out and placed his massive claw on her shoulder. It was a gesture of respect among one warrior to another. "You are no longer a guest in my house," Or said. "You are family." Tears flowed faster. I reached up and tried to wipe them away with his small claws, very carefully so he did not scratch her. "None no cry," he said. "I protect none now, always." Outside the palace, the 3 moons of Prime rose into the sky. A new chapter was beginning for the Empire. and at its heart was a small human woman who had shown them that the greatest strength of all was the courage to love. Han finished her examination and declared I completely healthy. No poison had touched him. He was safe. That night did not sleep alone in the nursery, or ordered a larger room prepared, with space for the heir and his human guardian. Guards were posted at every entrance, the most trusted warriors in the Empire. I curled up against as always, but this time something was different. His small claw held onto her hand tightly, as if he was afraid to let go. "Nastay," he whispered, "forever." Kissed the top of his head. "Forever, little one, I promise." He closed his eyes and slept, finally at peace. And stayed awake, watching over him, knowing that some promises were worth keeping no matter what it cost. 10 years had passed since the night of the assassination attempt. The galaxy had changed in ways no one had predicted. The peace treaty between Earth and the Empire, signed 3 months after the incident, had become the foundation for the largest alliance in recorded history. Species that had fought for centuries now traded peacefully. Worlds that had known only war now knew stability. And at the center of it all was a story. A story about a human woman who had looked at a monster and seen a child. A story about tiny teeth and a booped nose. A story that had somehow changed everything. Park stood on the balcony of the Galactic Assembly Building, watching the sun set over the capital city. She was older now, with streaks in her black hair and lines around her eyes. But her smile was the same as always, warm and gentle and full of kindness. "You should come inside," said a voice behind her. "The ceremony is about to begin." She turned and saw Lieutenant. He was a commander now, head of diplomatic security for the entire Earth delegation. The years had been kind to him, adding wisdom to his serious face. "I know," said. "I just needed a moment. It is strange, watching him grow up. In my heart, he is still that scared little baby hiding in the corner of a dark room." Smiled, "He is not little anymore." That was true. I had grown into a magnificent young, nearly 8 feet tall, with his father's dark red scales and his mother's gentle eyes. He moved with the grace of a trained warrior, but spoke with the thoughtfulness of a scholar. Today was his official inauguration as the ambassador for peace, the first of his kind. It was a position that had not existed before him. He had created it himself with his father's blessing. The ceremony hall was packed with representatives from every species in the alliance. Humans sat beside. Former enemies shared tables as friends. The change was remarkable, and everyone knew who had started it. Supreme Warlord sat in the place of honor. He was ancient now by standards, his scales faded and his movements slow. But his eyes still burned with intelligence, and his presence still commanded respect. When I walked to the podium, the hall fell silent. He was dressed in ceremonial robes that combined tradition with symbols of peace from a dozen worlds. Around his neck hung a simple chain with a small pendant. Those who knew the story recognized it. A tiny replica of an Earth cookie, the first gift had ever given him. "Distinguished guests," I began. His voice was deep and strong, filling the hall without effort. "I stand before you today as proof that change is possible, that even the fiercest hearts can learn gentleness, that even the oldest hatreds can give way to understanding." He paused and looked out at the crowd. "When I was young, I knew only rage and pain. My mother had died. My father was lost in his own grief. I attacked everyone who came near me. I was a monster, or so everyone believed." His eyes found in the audience. Then a small, soft creature walked into my dark room and sat down on the floor. She did not run when I attacked her. She did not fight back when I bit her. She looked at my teeth and called them tiny. She touched my nose and smiled. A murmur ran through the crowd. Everyone knew this story, but hearing it from I himself was different, more real. I did not understand her at first. In culture, kindness was weakness. Gentleness was failure. We respected only strength, only power, only violence. But this human showed me another way. She showed me that true strength is not about hurting others. It is about protecting them, about loving them even when they bite you. He straightened his shoulders. For 10 years, I have studied both and human ways. I have learned our history of conquest and their history of cooperation. I have seen what my people have done to the galaxy, and I have seen what we could become if we choose a different path. His voice grew stronger. Today, I accept the role of ambassador for peace. I do this not to reject my heritage, but to honor it. There have always been warriors. That will never change. But a true warrior knows when to fight and when to make peace. A true warrior protects the weak instead of preying on them. A true warrior has the courage to change. He held up his hand, showing his claws. These claws have the power to destroy, but they also have the power to create, to build, to reach out in friendship instead of violence. I choose the second path. I ask all to join me on it. The hall erupted in applause. Warriors who had once scoffed at the idea of peace now stood and cheered. Human delegates wiped tears from their eyes. Representatives from species that had suffered under conquest looked on with cautious hope. When the ceremony ended, I made his way through the crowd to find. She was standing near the back of the hall, trying to avoid attention as always. He knelt before her, bringing his massive form down to her level, just like he used to do when he was small. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for everything." Reached out and touched his face. Her hand looked so small against his scales. "You did this yourself, little one. I just showed you the way. You showed me that I was worthy of love. That was everything." He pulled something from his robes, a piece of paper, old and worn, covered in crayon drawings. It was a picture he had made as a child. Two figures holding hands, a large with tiny teeth and a small human with a big smile. "I have kept this since I was a year old," I said. "On bad days, when I doubted myself, I would look at it and remember that someone believed in me before I believed in myself." Took the picture with trembling hands. Tears streamed down her face. "I am so proud of you," she whispered, "so incredibly proud." I gathered her into his arms, careful not to hurt her with his claws. She felt so small against his massive chest, but she had never been small to him. She had always been the largest thing in his universe. Or approached them slowly, his ancient body creaking with each step. He looked at his son and the human woman who had saved him in every way that mattered. "She changed you," the old warlord said, "and through you she changed our entire empire. One small, soft creature and she moved worlds." Shook her head. "I did not move anything, I just loved him. Everything else came from that." Or considered this for a moment. Then he made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Perhaps that is the secret humans have discovered that no other species understands. You do not conquer with armies or weapons. You conquer with love, and somehow, impossibly, it works." Later that night, sat in I's office in the embassy. The walls were covered with pictures and memories from the past 10 years. Photos of his first steps, his first words, his first day of school. Images of diplomatic meetings, peace negotiations, and historic moments. And in the center of it all, a simple framed photograph. A young human woman, smiling brightly, holding a tiny infant in her arms. The infant was asleep, its small claws wrapped around her finger. On the back of the frame, in handwriting, were the words, "My favorite tiny-toothed troublemaker, love always." I entered the office and found her looking at the photograph. He sat down beside her, his massive form somehow managing to look gentle and soft. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked, "leaving Earth, spending your life here with us?" Smiled and reached out to pat his arm. "Not for a single moment. You were the greatest adventure of my life, and you still are." He leaned against her, just like he used to do when he was small. She put her arm around him as best she could and held him close. Outside, the stars shone over a galaxy that was slowly learning to heal. Wars were ending. Alliances were forming. Enemies were becoming friends. And it had all started with a bite, a smile, and a gentle boop on the nose. The story spread to every world. It was taught in schools, retold in homes, and celebrated in ceremonies. The tale of the human who saw past the monster. The tale of the child who learned that love was the greatest strength of all. Centuries later, when historians wrote about the great peace that had transformed the galaxy, they always began with the same words. Once upon a time, a tiny bit of human woman, and she smiled and said, "Tiny teeth," and nothing was ever the same again. The end.